Continuing on, this is part two of the CryptoMom saga. CryptoMom is the SEC commissioner. This is what she's known as, Hester Pierce. If you haven't seen part one is where I guess defend her or try to clear her name. I saw a YouTuber that's got hundreds of thousands of subscribers blatantly spread misinformation. You know, maybe he doesn't know that it's misinformation, but if he doesn't, it means he didn't do any due diligence on the article he was reading, where he was reporting that the SEC is fining her $10 million for fraud. She's a commissioner for the SEC. She would not hold that position any longer, I think is safe to say. So it should have been pretty obvious that she's not wasn't involved in that. If you guys want to see how I broke that down and cleared her name, watch part one. The other part is where she's sort of being vilified right now, for wanting to do away with and completely scrap the CAT system. So the CAT system is the consolidated audit trail. This is, we'll go into like the definition. I'll show you all that stuff, but it's basically collecting all information on all investors, personal and financial. So let's dive into one of these news articles that particular YouTuber was actually citing, and this article is, or seems to be rather factually correct. Okay, we can see here the SEC delays parts of the market surveillance initiative until 2024. This is that CAT system, but is met with some opponents such as SEC Commissioner Hester Pierce. In 2016, let's highlight this for you. The SEC approved a rule to establish the consolidated audit trail, which would capture data on customers and orders on exchange-listed equities and over-the-counter securities across the U.S. markets. The system would provide the SEC with an enormous amount of data or databases of information to help the agency detect and quickly react to events that disrupt the markets and could potentially harm investors. Right there, we want that. Absolutely, 100%. We need a system like that. This CAT system is not going to be that system. It's not really going to work for that, and for a number of reasons that I'll lay out. But guess what? I've got a solution. Make sure you stay to the end to see it, and provide your feedback by commenting or joining our Discord to continue the conversation. The CAT system has been met with, and they say dogged, but with security issues, and it's caused delays after delays after delays, because we're talking about centralizing all financial and personal information from every investor in the United States and everything they do. That's alarming and a massive overreach of government resources, in my opinion. Commissioner Hester Pierce, of course, agrees, and I quote, "The CAT, a project designed to give the SEC and other regulators comprehensive market insight, has proved to be much harder and more expensive to implement than anyone anticipated. I have grave concerns about the whole project. The dollars, distraction, dissension, and drain of endless meetings over the past several years of CAT implementation are reasons enough to reconsider the entire project. The risk to liberties and securities posed by the project should compel us to do so." Again, this is a massive surveillance that they're trying to establish here. So I've lined out all her key points, right? So she wrote a dissent, which is a long, lengthy response to why she feels that the whole project should be scrapped, and it mostly goes to invasion of privacy. So without due process or probable cause. Okay, so that's one of the questions that we want to ask on how we can run the system while still maintaining privacy and not surveilling people unless there is probable cause. So we have addressed that issue in the schematic that I'm going to show you about how we can create a better CAT system, which I call the little d CAT system. So that is probably like her biggest personal one. It's a very Republican thing. And although she was appointed by the Obama administration, she was appointed to fill a Republican seat. The other thing is it's a security concern. Okay, we're talking about centralizing all of this data. It is an enormous amount of data and would be a huge target for hackers. Okay, so we come down to how can we create a system where we are displaying, or we have all of this data being collected while maintaining privacy. Okay. And due process and all that other stuff for when they do find bad actors. So let's go ahead and pop this up and show how we can do or create such a system, and all the technology already exists. Okay, so here we have their system, which is the consolidated audit trail. This is the CAT system. This is where you take all the NMS stocks. This is like every exchange in America, OTC equity securities, listed options, all market activity. This is like market making. Anybody who does anything whatsoever with securities on any platform in the U.S., private or otherwise, would run through this system. They would send all of their information, every transaction, whether they actually purchased or not, even if they put a bid order and didn't actually follow through with it, that would be tracked. It would all be centralized in a database that would be enforced by the SEC, which is thousands of people having limited or limitless or unlimited access to your data in real time. This system looks pretty not as complex, but let's go into our version of the consolidated auto trail, which we call the little d, which stands for decentralized consolidated auto trail. The little d cat system would begin with the KYC process, just like every other agency or firm. This would be like JP Morgan or Bank of America. Everyone's got to go through a KYC process. When you do the KYC with them, you are issued an NFT. This NFT is registered to all of the wallets that you use to trade. So these are the wallets that you use to trade on these various platforms, to buy Amazon or McDonald's or whatever you're purchasing. You would use a wallet. That wallet would have a specific ID to it, like the wallet ID, and that would only be tied to your NFT, and your NFT is tied to your identity. So operating all of this on the blockchain, just as we do right now, like you can see on Etherscan or BSC Scan or Polyscan, this data is anonymous. We can see every single transaction that's happening, how much they paid for it, what they did, all those data points we can see, but we can't see who actually did it. And we could actually have this public, versus the CAT system would still be private to just the SEC. This is a way for the public to have access, every firm would have access to what wallets are doing what things, and when they're purchasing, how they're purchasing, if they're doing a bid order and not following through with it, all those sorts of things. So now let's get back to the trader. So the trader has already gotten their NFT, and that's tied to all their wallets. They log into a system of exchanges, right? So this is the platform that they're actually trading on, whether it be like Robinhood or Fidelity or whatever. They log in, the system will check to see if their NFT is registered. If it is not registered, it is access denied. If it is registered, then you've got access granted, and then now you can enter in and you could trade stocks, equities, options. You could participate in market activities, so like market making, all that kind of stuff. All of this data is on the public blockchain. This is the little cat blockchain, and that information can be accessed by the Security Exchange Commission. They then can identify bad actors, and then at that point they have to ask themselves, once they've identified a potential bad actor, does it meet our defined standards? And if it doesn't actually meet it, then archive that transaction, right? Because maybe this person develops a pattern over time, and we can go back to our archives and see that. If it does meet the standard for the SEC standard for a bad actor, then they submit that evidence to a financial court of some degree. All right, so it's important that this financial court or this other regulatory agency is not part of the SEC, right? We want that separate. They review the information, the evidence. They ask themselves the question, is this enough information to prosecute? If it is enough information, if it's not, rather, enough information to prosecute, then no, and we go ahead and archive that, right? So again, we want this always archived, so that even though we can't just go back on the chain, but so that if a pattern does develop and there ends up being enough information for a judgment, then we can go back to the archive and see it. If the judgment comes back as yes, then the agency, or the court rather, would send a subpoena to the firm for the identity of the bad actor, right? Because at this point, the SEC still doesn't know who this is. They just know that it's a potential bad actor. So that subpoena is issued to the firm. The firm is then compelled to release the identity of the bad actor. The identity is sent to the SEC prosecutorial team. That's been a very challenging word for me to say for whatever reason. And at that point, then they start building their case towards that person, whatever it is. Could be grand jury, could be whatever. What I like about this process is that is the one, it protects the identity throughout the whole the whole process. This potentially could open up a scenario where maybe someone in the SEC, right, where they could be found, the judgment could go through, and they could be found as a bad actor, and the SEC could potentially be investigating their friends or colleagues that they wouldn't have otherwise if they knew their identity beforehand. But once it goes to the court and the court issues the subpoena, it's already been set in motion. That gets sent right to the team. At that point, sure, they can dump it. But the what would also be cool, now that I think of it, is that all that information is on chain. But you wouldn't want, actually, obviously, the identity to be revealed on chain. Either way, I digress. This is a really cool way that we can have a CAT system where we are collecting all the data in an anonymous way and protecting identity, because that identity already lives with those agencies or those firms anyway, right? Fidelity, Robinhood, Bank of America, Chase, all of them. They already have all that identity. They continue to store that identity the way that they do. They don't ever release that identity unless they're compelled by a subpoena. So it protects all that, while not just giving the SEC all of the data, but the public. We can see all of that. I want to really convey how important that is, because right now we are in a shitstorm of just bad apples, right? In specifically DeFi within crypto, where we have Celsius, 3AC, Voyager, massive billions of dollars firms that are no more. They all declared bankruptcy. And largely because they were taking our money, investors, and they were loaning it out to people they should not have loaned it out to. And people started defaulting, and they missed their margin calls, and liquidations happened. And this is all happening at the expense of the investor. How is it that with the housing crisis and everything that happened in 2008, that we're still at a point 14 years later where out of this whole shit show in the housing crisis and the Great Recession, this is what blockchain was birthed out of? How is it that we've advanced this far into blockchain, which is not that far at all yet, but I mean far enough to where a lot of the world is involved in it, and major institutions, and we're still not really utilizing for what it's supposed to be utilized for? We're still not operating in a decentralized way, at least in the form of viewing the transactions. How is it that we give these banks and financial institutions so much power? We give them all of our money. They're not shit without us. They can't do anything without us. Nothing. How is it that we don't demand that they at least operate in a way that we can see where they're moving money and when they're moving it to? Again, identity is very important that we keep that private, and so we won't know exactly who they're giving it to, but we would know the terms of the deal, right? So, and we would know those transactions went through. We could see if people are defaulting, right? And that would give us an idea of if maybe they're subprime loans. I mean, this is the future. I really think that I don't see us operating any other way. But I also think that we would avoid a lot of the bullshit that we found ourselves in with companies like 3AC and Celsius and Voyager that went bankrupt after taking our money and leveraging it on other shit that we didn't know about. I think they would act different if they knew we could see every transaction. Those are my thoughts. If you have any thoughts, if you want to join the conversation, comment. If you like the material, you want to see more of it, please subscribe and like. Join our Discord, join the conversation, start your own conversation. I'm interested. For now, we'll see you guys next week with some other material. But I do know next week we are talking about real estate. So, and we will continue to talk a little bit more about real estate. But I am interested in your opinions on the CAT system and if something like this would work for us. Take care.